Talk Live.
Welcome to episode number 13 of the Free Talk Cast, brought to you by LRN.FM and the same people who bring you the radio show Free Talk Live. Now, this is episode 13, so you're probably familiar with the concept, but this is basically just a short form version of the radio show that is made specifically to be a podcast. It's brought to you today by Randy Van Raden. That's today's supporter. You can support us at patreon.com/LRNFM. If you'd like to show your support for these various projects, Mark and I were actually discussing earlier the creation of an additional show. And I realize there's a lot of content that we're already putting out there, but this one would be a video show that was also available as a podcast. It wouldn't be the Free Talk Cast, but it would be a new show that does actually contain video. And I really like that idea. And it's been on my back burner for a while, but been very busy rolling out other projects that I felt like were more important, such as the new LRN YouTube channel where you can find the Libertarians On series, where we get a libertarian and we give them 1 minute to discuss one issue that is important to them. And the point of this is to have a series that is easily shareable, easy to watch. And if someone is curious about how child raising or education or borders or bicycle helmets or whatever works in a libertarian society, there's this 1 minute long video that they can share and watch and, show their friends, simplifying, spreading the ideas of liberty, basically. Anyway, we're joined this week, and I realize the episode is going a little bit late, but that's because the person that's joining us today is super busy, and he's always difficult to coordinate with because he's super busy. And I mentioned this to my boyfriend earlier, and he was like, well, hopefully he shows up for your appointment. I pointed out that that's never been an issue. When Mark Edge has an appointment, he's always there, and he's always available. So thank you for that, Mark. I see you showing skepticism. In my experience,
I love that that's what you think about me. But I mean, I live in this skin, and I beat myself. I flagellate over the appointments that are missed and a minute late. As far as I'm concerned, I ascribe to Tom Hanks's theory that on time is late, and you need to be 10 minutes early. So. I'll often be sitting in a Zoom meeting as the only person there, just waiting for things to start with my headphones on.
I used to be like that as well. Unfortunately, as time has gone on, I find myself arriving at best on time, and more often than not, a few minutes late. And I realize those are not good qualities in a person. But usually when I'm running, they are. Usually when I'm running late, I also message the other person to let them know that I'm running a few minutes late so that they know.
Yeah.
And it's
in a modern world, I think that's the best that we can hope for. We've gotten, there's just so much, productivity is higher now.
It is.
And more is expected. You're expected to do more things in a day in many ways. I think that the best thing that you can do is send a quick message that says, running a little behind, give me another 5 minutes or whatever you think you'll need. And by the way, guess long. Don't guess short. Don't minimize it. And say, hey, no, I'll be there in 15 minutes. When the thing says 20 minutes right there in the car or whatever.
That's really good advice. I was running late for my doctor's appointment yesterday. This was actually 100% my fault. I forgot that I was going to work afterwards. And for those who know me personally, you know that I wear flip-flops 99% of the time. And I cannot wear flip-flops at work. And I left, and I was halfway to Keene, New Hampshire, when I realized I could still see my painted toenails. And that was a little bit of a problem, considering I had work immediately after the doctor's appointment. So I texted her, by the way, if you're living in New Hampshire, Monarcha Primary, that should be your primary doctor. I went to her yesterday about various issues, and the quote, prescriptions that I walked away with was to eat 2 teaspoons of flaxseed every day and eat more beets and more kale. And she did also prescribe me something that's going to help me quit smoking. I attempted to quit immediately after I restarted back because I hate smoking and I don't want to be a smoker. I was really proud of having quit for 2.5 years. But getting out of prison and other things that happened as I rejoined society stressed me out to a point. I realized not a good excuse, but it stressed me out to the point where I started back smoking. And I've been struggling to quit more or less ever since. Chantix, however, did not work for me this time like it did last time. And I suspect that the reason for this was because I started taking it too soon in the smoking process. Like within 2 weeks of having started back smoking, I had started taking Chantix. And I don't think I had built up enough of an addiction to nicotine for the Chantix to do its thing. My theory is that while I was on Chantix, it was simply preventing me from becoming further addicted, but I wasn't addicted enough for it to have the addiction there for it to break.
What about like a non-nicotine vape or something that gives you the stimulation that you want to get from smoking or whatever without the drug?
That was what I did when I was on Chantix initially. I used the nicotine patches and I continued to smoke for about the first month or so, more or less as one is supposed to do while on Chantix. Eventually, I switched to a 6 milligram vape juice. And finally, about a week later, I switched to 0 milligrams. And I continued doing that for about 3 weeks before I just put that down entirely because it was pointless. It doesn't scratch the itch right now that a cigarette does. But we are trying a different medication. I thought Chantix was the only game in town.
I guess I did too.
Yeah, evidently it isn't. There's another medication that she started me on. So she did write some actual prescriptions. I just haven't picked it up yet. That it's an antidepressant, so I'm not super excited.
Wellbutrin?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. It works for quitting smoking or just...
Works for everything,
okay.
To be honest.
Well, I'm not super jazzed about the possibility of taking antidepressants. I'm not a depressed person, despite having been diagnosed with major depressive disorder during the pre-sentencing psychology report. I don't think that's necessarily true. I may have what a psychologist would expect. Let me rephrase that. A psychologist would probably expect me to have depression, but I really don't. I have a happy life. I'm not bored. I don't lose interest in the things that normally interest me. I have a good life and I enjoy it. And to me, that sort of is proof that I don't struggle with depression. And I know that it's not a SSRI, a selective serotonin
Uptake rehabilitative.
Yeah, some kind of crazy nonsense. It's not one of those, but it seems to do the same thing with norepinephrine, which is another chemical that makes your brain happy. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist or a doctor. I just know that antidepressants have a lot of side effects that I'm not looking forward to. But hey, so did Chantix. And I got through that just fine. So all of that said, yeah, definitely check out Monarca. Anyway, I texted her, which is one of the main reasons I would suggest them as a primary care provider. It's an amazing service. You get there, you schedule your appointment online, and you get there, and the doctor themselves immediately comes down and gets you and takes you to your room where you sit with them, and they go over your vitals and do all the things that doctors are supposed to do, and then they just spend an hour or so talking to you, finding out what's going on with your life, finding out what you need and what your health is like. You don't spend 2 hours in a waiting room, and then you don't get moved to another little examination room where you spend another hour waiting on a doctor to show up.
Yeah, the modern premium on doctors' time it's ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't allow them to do their job properly. They just can't get enough information from the patient with a 5-minute visit. It makes all the difference in the world. That time makes all the difference in the world.
It does. And being able to actually sit down with your doctor and have this hour-long conversation with them is tremendously different. And it only costs $60 per month. There's no additional fee when you go to your appointment, just $60 a month, which is less than half of your average doctor visit.
Yep.
It's
heck of a lot cheaper than insurance.
It is. They do not take insurance, but with only $60 a month, like, why do you need insurance anyway? So highly would recommend that service. I was able to text her and tell her that I was running a few minutes late. I said 5 to 10, and it turned out to be about 2 minutes late. To support your point that it's always better to overestimate, it's just like being a contractor. You don't want to tell the client, I can do it for $10,000 and then bill them for $12,000. You want to tell them we can do it for $15,000 and then bill them for $12,000.
Well, the difficulty with being a contractor is if the person goes and gets 3 bids and the other contractor says I can do it for $7,000, and you said 12, and they come in and do it ultimately for $10,000, and you do it for $10,000, then you're out of the running essentially. By doing the right thing, you're out of the running. And contracting's difficult stuff. I think the worst part is how long. When it comes to contractors. I mean, I'm willing to pay whatever it might be, as long as it's reasonable. It's just that, man, don't tell me it's going to be a month when it's going to be 6.
Yeah, I remember that experience when the siding was being put on my old house, where it was supposed to be done in early April and the project went on until August or so. That was a miserable experience, though, because for about 2 years, there were always contractors there working on something. And I realized that a lot of this is because they smoked a lot of pot and just sort of goofed off. But it's not pleasant to have contractors as part of your life for such an extended amount of time.
I think especially if, like for me, I feel obligated to go help them.
Really?
I want to go help them because I can do the stuff that they do. I have done the stuff that they do. And when they're there, like I'm like doing other stuff. And so them milling about makes me feel like I'm torn in different directions. Like I should be doing what they're doing, and instead I'm doing this other thing.
I understand that in regard to like my old housekeeper, because every time she would come out there to clean, I felt really bad that I was just like on my computer playing a video game or maybe even doing something work related while this person is going around cleaning my house for me.
Yeah.
So I get that. But all of that aside, Mark, thank you for sitting down with us today. I've been wanting to get you on the Free Talk Cast, I think, since the very first episode. But as I mentioned, you are a supremely busy person. And you're drinking an alcohol-free Budweiser, I see.
I am. I ran out of my seltzers, so the only thing that was in the fridge was a Budweiser Zero, and I just don't like straight water. I just don't pour it in a glass and drink it usually.
Okay. I drink a lot of water. That started in prison. It was probably one of the more positive developments to come out of my time in prison. But right now, I'm drinking coconut milk with the little chunky bits in it. I guess it would just be pulp, but
Pulp.
yeah, it's really good. I love coconut milk, and it's very difficult to find a brand that I actually like. So what's been going on with you, Mark? Because I know you're a busy guy. You were a really busy guy before I went to prison, and I imagine all of those projects that you had going on continue to exist and continue to grow in one form or another. So what project are you most excited about right now that you're working on?
Well, most recently I've been getting ready to go to Liberty in Our Lifetimes in Prague. I've got some people I need to meet there, and
that's something you go to every year, correct?
So far, 3 times, 4 times. I'm not sure exactly how many. It's in. I got the website pulled up because I knew you'd ask.
Yeah.
November 1st through the 3rd in Empire Hall, Prague, Czech Republic. That's 55 days from now. It's a podcast, so you'll need to check at libertyinourlifetime.org. You can get your tickets there. It's inexpensive. And basically, 40 plus speakers, all talking about creating sort of new societies and that sort of thing. I like these guys because they're doing it. I as much as I love the Free State Project, and I do, I think that New Hampshire will be as free as a state can be, and that doesn't allow the flexibility that I'm interested in as far as freedom goes. I mean, already there are like for instance, I used to talk about Saipan, the U.S. Marianas. Saipan's the capital city of the U.S. Marianas.
Yeah, that's right. You had residency there.
Yep.
Or citizenship. I don't remember exactly which.
It's a U.S. territory, so you can only get residency there.
Okay.
They are all U.S. citizens.
Okay, neat.
So
does that project...
place I would call... Well, it's not a project. So that project is essentially defunct in so much as, there's a few people who moved there for more freedom, and they got it. and that's great. But I think that one of the great things about New Hampshire, for instance, is that there's always something to do to get more freedom, right? So if you're a freedom hobbyist going to Saipan and getting what I called the triple crown of of liberty, which was legal prostitution, legal weed, and legal gambling. By the
I
way,
think
it's
I would agree with that.
ignored prostitution, but I don't do any of those things.
Okay.
So that in and of itself is kind of boring. Once those things are achieved,
Yeah.
so you can try to get more freedom there, and then you'll see how difficult it is to work within their governmental system. I would say it's easier to work within New Hampshire's governmental system. It's just going to be longer and harder to get where Saipan is. And I don't see for me, I'm not there for the big benefits of social freedom because I don't need or want them. I'm wherever I am for the benefit of taxation. And frankly, now I have systems where I pay little to no tax anyway.
Okay,
so
that's good.
You can do that legally. It's quite possible. They went after Elon Musk for a while for not paying tax, and he didn't owe tax. He wasn't doing anything illegal.
The U.S. tax code is so long and ridiculous. I don't know if this is true, but one of my teachers in high school told us that they gave the same financial information to, I think, 15 different accountants in order to find out the tax liability, and all 15 accountants generated a different result.
Yeah.
And that's the U.S. tax code in a nutshell. They don't really know how much you owe unless you're just reporting your W-2 and allowing them to automatically withdraw whatever it is they withdraw each month.
And Trump said it, and you can believe it's true. In this, of the many things he says that are not true, this you can believe is true, is that he is one of those people that donates to campaigns, and those politicians are going to continue to write the tax code that benefits those people in that way. So the reason that, say, Elon Musk doesn't have to pay taxes is doesn't have any income. He doesn't get paid in the businesses that he does. He has stock in those businesses, and that stock is unrealized gains. Then he takes loans against that stock because it's worth something. And those loans are at low interest because why wouldn't they be? Banks aren't taking a risk. They're holding $1 million, in his case, $500 million in stock. Why wouldn't they give him $5 million on that at 1%?
Right. And because he's not selling it, there's no actual tax liability there. There is no gain to be taxed in the first place. Right. It's all very confusing, and it's beyond the means of the average person. Most of the people that I've ever met in my life are just taking their W-2 to TurboTax or Mo Money taxes, which, by the way, went out of business because they were cheating on people's taxes in order to get them back more money, which was nice for the client, but not so much a good business practice. But they would take it to TurboTax or H&R Block or something. That person there would just fill out the form for you, and then you would get some money from the government. One of the frustrating things about this to me is that so many of these people refer to this as getting back. My sister's among them. Oh, I'm getting back $12,000 this year. Yep. And first of all, why the hell are you getting $12,000 from the government? I don't have kids, so I'm just kept out of that. I don't get that free money every single year because you didn't keep your legs closed or you didn't use protection or whatever. But they always refer to it as getting the money back, even though they didn't pay anywhere near that amount into federal income taxes. So It's not getting money back. It's just getting money from somewhere or something.
Well, we say the sun rises when in fact the earth spins.
Yeah.
It's just a sort of way to say things. Secondly, as far as from a U.S. government standpoint, I can understand they definitely want you to have children that they can tax in the future. They have this debt that's going on, and they need to pay it, or they need to pay on it anyway. So you need to have kids, and they want very much for you to do that. Any society needs you to have kids, so why not give the people who did some money? And that's what's going on there. I mean, you're going to give the United States government gives money out to all kinds of people, in welfare, corporate welfare, foreign aid, whatever it might be. So, at this way, at the very least, they are looking out for their own self-interest.
Which is a sad but true way of looking at it. Unfortunately, you are absolutely right. To the American government, every new person born is someone that they can tax, or at least use as leverage in order to get more money from the Federal Reserve. So what is the project that you're working on right now? Because we sort of glossed over that and ended up talking about Saipan and taxes. But I know you've got a number of...
I'm going to Liberty in our lifetime. I am... I'll just spit out the projects and we'll go from there.
Okay.
I am working with several organizations in Honduras on this sort of the ZA project, if we can still even use that term, and to see where that goes. So Honduras has some interesting legislation that may increase human freedom, and I'm spending some time doing that. There's some other projects I'm keeping an eye on as far as that goes. I'm running for office in New Hampshire, and maybe I'll get that too.
Oh, I thought you had backed out of that.
I suspended my campaign, but since I live in the town I'm running in, I can't remove my name from the ballot.
Okay.
So it would be inaccurate to say that I am not running.
Okay.
I have suspended my campaign. Now, some people never started. So
I'm looking forward to being able to run for office again. I cannot run this year because I'm currently serving a prison sentence, and in New Hampshire, you can run for office while being a felon, but not while you're actively serving a sentence. And of course, I'm on federal probation until probably May. I'll probably get cut loose a little bit early. So I would expect January or February, I will actually have my probation ended. Regardless, I can't run for office right now, which is really unfortunate because the campaign manager for Vermin Supreme actually floated the idea of me being Vermin Supreme's running mate.
That's interesting.
And that would make me so unbelievably happy. I love Vermin Supreme and everything. This is the guy who wears the boot on his head, by the way.
Do you have to... I'm curious, do you actually have to register to run for office to be Vermin Supreme's running mate?
I don't think so. And at this point, the Libertarian primaries and all of that stuff is over anyway, so we would be running as independents on a write-in campaign. So it would be kind of pointless to pursue at this time. When Vermin Supreme and his team were exploring it, I had just gotten out of prison, and this was maybe a few weeks before I think I was still at the halfway house when the Libertarian Party had its convention. So...
yeah, I think you might have been.
Yeah, so I didn't get a lot of chance to explore the possibility, and they didn't even get a chance to talk to me about it until well after the fact. So I'm looking forward to that, hopefully, in 2028.
Well, in my campaign, for whatever reason, it appears as though the Young Americans for Liberty had sent out a text sort of telling the voters of Hudson, New Hampshire to, but warning them about the candidate. So is it possible that some people will simply not vote for that candidate? I'm not trying to, I'm not actively running, so I'm not saying she did a bad thing or whatever. Right. I personally would vote for me, but that's because I believe what I believe. And nobody who's this likely lives in Hudson, New Hampshire anyway. So,
right.
And it'll probably potentially get published after September the 10th anyway. So, all of it's sort of meaningless.
Well, I hope it works out.
Yeah. Well, would I like to win? I would definitely take office if I won. But I, again, am not going to actively campaign. I would encourage people to go vote.
I enjoy the process of actively campaigning, at least in some cases. I don't do the whole door knocking thing, even though that's tremendously successful in New Hampshire. Yep. But my campaigns tend to be more shock and awe style. I enjoy doing that. My next move, honestly, is I did just register as a member of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, which I've been meaning to do ever since I moved to New Hampshire, but I finally actually went ahead and did it because I can't stand having an R next to my name because I'm not a Republican and I don't share a lot of common ground with Republicans. And as we talked about before, the widespread perception of Republicans is not an image that I want to share. So I'm going to switch my official registration to the Democratic Party, and I'm going to run for office here in New Hampshire as a Democrat. And I stand a much better chance of being successful with that because the Democrats tend to have a stronghold here in southwestern New Hampshire, especially in Keene, where I no longer live. But if I ran as a Democrat in Keene, if I had somehow gotten the Democratic nomination for sheriff, I would have been sheriff. I would have won that election. And I've seen
if you had somehow gotten the Democratic nomination, but
right,
the
which
seated sheriff was a Democrat at the time.
Right. And I would not have gotten the nomination over him.
No.
But I've seen the buses of young college-age kids being brought into the voting booths, and every single one of them lines up to register to vote. And I know they don't tell these people vote for the Democrat because that's illegal, but they also don't have to. You know that 22-year-old girl with blue hair is going to vote for the Democrats.
Yep.
So I've seen these buses with my own eyes. I didn't think it was a thing that really happened until I saw it. And I was
don't
shocked.
think you can win in Keene as anything. That would be my response. So I lived in Keene, New Hampshire for 15 years or whatever?
Yeah.
Yep. It is a Democrat stronghold, but the Democrats run they're much less democratic than the Republicans are, everywhere. But New Hampshire, they already know. They know that Free Staters, if we want to use that terminology, I don't think you actually signed up for the Free State Project, did you?
I did not, but they claim me as one of theirs, and I don't really take issue with that.
So they know that what they call Free Staters, they know that they run as Republicans and Democrats, and they're infuriated by that. I mean, and I don't know how to describe it any other like infuriated by the fact that you don't believe their party platform, which they don't believe either. Yeah. And they are going to do anything to keep you off the ballot as a Democrat. Now, they won't be successful in keeping you off the ballot as a Democrat, but they will certainly tell enough people in Keene, New Hampshire, not to vote for you, that you're a poser or whatever term they're going to use, an interloper, Confederate, and that to stay away from you, that you simply will not win as a Democrat. You will not win as a Republican because you have the R behind your name, but the Republicans are pissed off about you too. You are correct. Yeah. I would agree that your personality, your visage is too much for the Republicans to handle. And that, the reason I didn't bother running for state house when I lived in Cheshire County was because I was never going to win. Sure. I never lived in a Republican leaning district. So any time and energy I put into running was a waste of time. I mean, I could build name recognition if that's what I wanted to do, but it really wasn't useful. And the Republicans asked me not to. And so I just didn't.
I'm not sure to what extent the Democrats can actually speak out against me because I am a trans person. Any amount of speaking out against me makes them look bad. And they're aware of that.
All they have to do is say that you ran as a Republican,
right?
6 years ago.
But these people know that. The Democrats in New Hampshire, they know that. And that they were one of the reasons that I got 25% of the vote when I ran for sheriff in the general election, even though I suspect no Republicans voted for me. And this was
all they have to do is say, that Joan Smith, Joan Smith, who everybody knows is the local president of the Democratic Party or whatever of Keene, says vote for the person who isn't Aria DiMezzo. Mm-hmm. And that's how this is done. I mean, there's just too much.
Yeah.
For libertarians are logical beasts. And what I'm telling you is the system is rigged in Cheshire County. If you are to win anything in Cheshire County, you will have to move away from Keene, New Hampshire, into another place and live in another place. And I suspect Cheshire County itself is corrupt and not useful. But and that's one of the reasons I moved. I mean, not only did I want to be closer to the airport, but I knew that when I picked a town, I wasn't going to pick a town that was all Democrat
To be
and not
fair,
have a chance to win.
I don't really want to win an office. Now, if I ran for the state house, I would be okay serving in the state house.
Yep.
But just about I would just vote no on just about everything because
Sure.
that seems like the way to go. But just
And the
about
state house has gotten better in New Hampshire, by the way.
It has.
Now you don't have to see. You won't even get if you don't want one, you won't get assigned to a committee.
Oh, okay, even better. So
Yep.
it's basically just a free $100 a month. I mean, year, because that's the pay for the state reps here in New Hampshire.
Well, and some gas money to drive to Concord.
Well, that's good at least. But that was probably the only office I would actually serve in. I do plan to run for governor in 2026,
Uh-huh.
possibly as a libertarian. I haven't fully decided yet. Might try to do that as a Democrat. Who knows, right? The possibilities are endless, and I want to do the thing that is going to have the most impact, even if it doesn't allow me to win. And that
Your sheriff's campaign had a huge impact.
it did.
I mean, people still talk about it. The anarchist, atheist, Republican sheriff sheriff candidate of Cheshire County. I mean, that had a huge impact.
It did.
Now, if you'd asked me to put money on whether you were going to win or not, I would have put my money on no. But it had a huge impact as far as a campaign. And you seem to enjoy running for office. I don't like people saying mean things about me, especially the lies, the falsehoods, and the lies that got dug up, and the falsehoods that were said about me. During my campaign, I'm like, oh my God, you people are outrageous. That's why I suspended my campaign, because of just the crap that they were spewing. But yeah.
So you mentioned previously, to get back to that subject, the ZAs, and you said that you didn't know if they could even still be called ZAs at this
Right.
point. So what's happening with that? Because the last I heard, there was some law passed in the Honduras that or a constitutional amendment or something saying that these ZAs were no longer allowed.
Let me get you up to speed on it. So for those that don't know, a ZA is an educational economic development zone. It's spelled in Spanish.
Okay.
And what essentially it is it allows a autonomous, what I call a special autonomous zone. As a special economic zones, there are tens of thousands of them around the world. You can't really call them special anymore because they're just economic zones. So a special autonomous zone has more autonomy. If the economic zone, through a lack of regulation and freedom, through freedom and a lack of regulation, creates more opportunity for people to build better lives and make more money, and that's good, then presumably a zone that has less regulation and more freedom will do more of that, right? And so Honduras, their government, people who were in power 10 years ago or whatever, passed a series of, constitutional amendment, got it through the Supreme Court, passed laws, and did all kinds of stuff to allow these from, I think, 2017 till now. ZAs had been being worked on, and, they were growing, and, you can't do these things overnight. And so, they were doing what they were supposed to do. The communists got in control. Communists, as much as they talk about, people being free, really hate the idea of competing ideas. They want diversity until you're talking about a diversity of ideas. And the communist government basically got in and rescinded the ZA law, which was the lowest of 3 tiers. So there was a treaty level, constitutional level, and then legal level for the ZAs. But the law itself is what created a ZA, not the constitutional amendment. The Constitution allowed special autonomous zones, but the law itself created ZAs. So the law has been repealed, but part of the whole original law was any ZAs that were in place were allowed to continue for 50 years. So they've got another 45 years or so in place to do whatever they do, but that's only 3 of them. And we'll see what happens with these 3 into the future. But what I'm saying is that even if they get back, the non-commies get back in control, and they pass a new set of legislation, which is likely, that allows special autonomous zones, they will not be ZAs. They cannot be ZAs unless they call them, I suppose, ZAs again. But at this point,
Okay.
you can't make a ZA. So the new thing, maybe we're guessing it'll be called a Zoli Plus.
All right. Interesting.
Zolis have been around for a long time, for like 30 years. They are factories in which your underwear is made. They're essentially, they allow for tax-free export, and they have some special autonomy. So they're special economic zones for factories. And if you allowed people to live in a Zoli, then, benefit from a tax standpoint and maybe have some of their own rules and those kind of things, then that would be not as good as a Zede, but better than a Zoli.
Okay. Very cool stuff. And people can go to libertyinourlifetime.com, I'm guessing.
.org.
Libertyinourlifetime.org if they want to learn more about maybe this project and various other projects that are going on around the world. For those who are curious about achieving liberty in our lifetimes, you're not interested in battling it out here in the States, as we're doing here in New Hampshire. There are projects, as Mark talked about, that exist around the world. Some of them are seasteading projects. Those are the ones that always come to mind and seem like the least practical ones to me. But I'm certain those will be discussed, as well as some ZAs and other special autonomous zones and special economic zones around the world at libertyinourlifetime.org. Mark, we're going to wrap it up here because we just hit the 35-minute mark, so that's a bit longer than the average episode of this is. I want to thank you again for joining us and sharing this information with us. Again, check out libertyinourlifetime.org and find out about these things and continue working to achieve liberty in your lifetime in whatever ways that you want liberty in your lifetime. I think that's the important thing. What you want, go after and acquire, and that's what makes the world a better place because you're making your own life better. That was all very badly phrased, but hey, that's what happens here. So thank you again for joining us, Mark, and check it out at libertyinourlifetime.org.